The German Shepherd stood motionless on the Nashville street corner, his matted fur barely moving in the autumn breeze. When the next pedestrian approached, he performed his ritual, front paws together, head lowering in a formal bow that seemed almost military in its precision. His eyes, amber pools of desperation, looked up without raising his head. The woman hurried past, clutching her purse tighter. 26 people had ignored him already. Jason Miller counted each rejection from behind Miller's Classic Burgers window, coffee growing cold in his hand. The dog's ribcage protruded beneath dirty fur. A jagged scar crossed his right ear. Yet something in his disciplined movements suggested training, purpose, a stark contrast to his abandoned state. A harsh voice suddenly cut through the morning air. The dog's entire body trembled, but he maintained his position, eyes darting toward Jason with a silent, unmistakable plea that struck like lightning. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. Jason Miller's weathered hands wiped down the counter of Miller's Classic Burgers for the third time that hour. At 35, the former soldier's son carried his father's squared shoulders and unflinching gaze. But lately those shoulders slumped under mounting bills and dwindling customers. The small Nashville restaurant had been his dream, a legacy to honor Captain Samuel Miller, whose military portrait hung above the register. The photograph captured his father's proud stance beside his military working dog, taken just months before the rescue operation that claimed his life 4 years ago. Jason's eyes often drifted to it during slow periods, which were becoming more frequent since the fast food chain opened 3 blocks away. The divorce papers tucked in his office drawer were just 2 years old, the ink barely dry on the custody agreement that limited his time with 8-year-old Tommy to every other weekend. The apartment above the restaurant echoed with the silence of a man who'd lost too much too soon. Eleanor Williams pushed through the door right at 11:30, punctual as always. At 78, the widow moved with deliberate grace, her silver hair pinned in the same neat bun she'd worn for decades. Her daily routine, a cheeseburger with extra pickles and unsweetened tea, was as reliable as her sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "That poor creature's still out there," she noted, settling at her usual corner table. A former nurse who'd lost her own son in Vietnam, Eleanor carried wisdom earned through tragedy. The neighborhood called her Grandma Ellie behind her back, a term of endearment she pretended not to know about. Sarah Mitchell appeared from the kitchen, balancing plates with practiced ease, despite being hired just 3 weeks prior. The single mother's cautious smile never quite reached her eyes, which constantly checked the door, a habit Jason recognized from his own post-deployment days. Her 6-year-old daughter Lily sometimes colored at the back booth after school, whispering to her dolls stories that made Jason wonder what the child had witnessed in her short life. What none of them knew was that Michael Thompson was watching the restaurant from his parked sedan across the street. The former K-9 officer's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white as he focused on the German Shepherd that had once been his salvation and his downfall. The dog that could expose secrets powerful men like Richard Blackwell would kill to protect. The respected businessman whose charitable donations masked the brutality of his underground dogfighting operation. 27 rejections. Jason had counted each person who walked past the Boeing dog before he finally pushed through his restaurant's door into the crisp autumn air. He approached slowly, a paper napkin wrapped around chunks of hamburger meat held cautiously in his outstretched hand. The German Shepherd froze, muscles tensed beneath his matted coat. His amber eyes assessed Jason with an intelligence that seemed almost human, calculating escape routes, while never moving from his position. Jason stopped 10 feet away and placed the meat on the sidewalk. "It's okay, buddy," he said softly, backing away with deliberate steps. The dog waited until Jason had retreated to the restaurant doorway before approaching the offering. His movements were precise, almost tactical, as he sniffed the meat before carefully taking it in his mouth. Rather than eating immediately, he carried it to a hidden spot behind a dumpster in the adjacent alley. Jason watched through the window as the dog returned minutes later, licking his lips but maintaining a vigilant posture. When the German Shepherd turned slightly, Jason noticed a fresh wound on his back, crusted with dried blood. Without thinking, he filled a paper bowl with water and placed it where the meat had been. Over the next week, a pattern emerged. The dog would appear each morning at precisely 9:30, perform his bowing ritual to passers-by until Jason brought food, then disappear until the following day. On the third day, Jason noticed the dog no longer bowed to everyone, only to him. "That ain't just any stray," Eleanor observed, watching the ritual from her usual table. "Way he moves reminds me of the service dogs they trained at Fort Campbell. My Harold worked with them before Vietnam." "He's so pretty," whispered Lily, Sarah's daughter, her small face pressed against the window during an after-school visit. The girl's innocent observation belied the dog's ragged condition, yet somehow captured a dignity that remains beneath the neglect. On the 8th day, something changed. The dog waited specifically for Jason to emerge and performed his deep bow. But instead of taking the food to his hiding place, he remained, watching Jason with cautious attention. He ate while Jason stood motionless 15 feet away, a small victory of trust. Jason noticed how the dog sat at perfect attention between bites, his movements displaying military precision despite his weakened state. This wasn't ordinary stray behavior. This dog had training, expensive, professional training. That evening, a black SUV drove slowly past the restaurant, the driver watching the dog who had settled in the alley. An uneasy feeling prompted Jason to take a photo of the German Shepherd and post it to the local community page. "Anyone missing this German Shepherd? Found near Miller's Burgers on 5th Street. The anonymous message arrived in his inbox at midnight. "Mind your own business if you know what's good for you." The next morning, the dog appeared with a fresh gash across his shoulder, his bow stiffer, but no less determined. Jason's jaw tightened as he made his decision. This couldn't continue. Whatever was happening to this dog needed to stop, regardless of the warning. Some lines shouldn't be crossed, and in Jason's book, hurting an animal this way was one of them. "Sarah," he called to his waitress as he hurried back inside, "I need your help with something after your shift."
"He won't come willingly,"
Sarah warned, clutching a bag of premium beef jerky, the expensive kind Jason could barely afford but bought anyway. They sat in his aging pickup truck, waiting for the German Shepherd to appear for his morning ritual. "Animals know when they're being trapped." Jason nodded, checking the makeshift leash fashioned from kitchen twine. "I've never seen wounds like that on a stray. Someone's hurting him deliberately." When the dog appeared, Sarah moved first, her approach gentler than Jason's could ever be. She'd grown up on a farm in Kentucky before her marriage, she'd explained, and animals responded to her quiet confidence. Sure enough, the German Shepherd watched her with cautious interest rather than fear. 20 minutes and most of the jerky later, they managed to coax the trembling animal into the truck's back seat. Jason drove carefully to Riverside Veterinary Clinic, where Dr. Kate Reynolds, a former high school classmate, had agreed to see them immediately. "This is worse than I expected," Dr. Reynolds murmured, her gloved hands moving gently over the sedated dog. Multiple fractures that healed improperly. Burns, lacerations both old and new. She pointed to circular wounds along his neck. These are consistent with shock collars, high voltage, not the regular training kind. Jason's fists clenched involuntarily. Is there a chip? Dr. Reynolds nodded, her expression grim as she held up the scanner. There is, but it's been damaged, deliberately, I'd say. I can make out part of a registration number, but it'll take time to trace. Her examination continued methodically. The scarring pattern here suggests professional sutures at some point. And these calluses, she indicated the dog's paws, are typical of police or military training on different terrain types. This isn't just any German Shepherd. He's had extensive training worth tens of thousands of dollars. Most disturbing was her final discovery. There are traces of antifreeze in his system, not enough to kill him yet, but consistent with slow poisoning. Someone's been trying to eliminate him quietly. Jason exchanged glances with Sarah. I can't take him back to the street. The shelter will euthanize a dog in this condition, Dr. Reynolds warned. They don't have resources for this level of medical care. That evening, Jason cleared out the restaurant's small storage room, creating a makeshift sanctuary with old blankets and a water bowl. When they brought the still groggy dog inside, he immediately inspected the space with military precision, despite his weakened state, checking corners and exit points. "What will you call him?" Sarah asked, watching the dog finally settle on the blanket, eyes still tracking their every movement. Max, Jason decided, the name coming to him without thought. He looks like a Max. Inside the restaurant's safety, Max's behavior shifted subtly. Though still fearful of sudden movements, he positioned himself strategically, always facing entryways, always alert. When delivery drivers arrived, he growled low in his throat until Jason acknowledged them. Most surprising was his reaction to Lily. While Max maintained distance from adults, he allowed Sarah's daughter to approach when others couldn't. The little girl seemed to understand his boundaries instinctively, sitting quietly nearby and talking to him in whispers about her school day. "He remembers being loved once," Eleanor observed, watching this interaction. "See how he tilts his head when she speaks." Someone taught him to listen. That night, unable to sleep, Jason researched German Shepherd rescue organizations. A news headline caught his attention. K9 unit disbanded after handler misconduct allegations. The article mentioned officers Michael Thompson and Daniel Reeves, whose controversial techniques had prompted an internal investigation 3 years ago. The following afternoon, Jason noticed a man watching the restaurant from across the street. Mid-40s, military posture, haunted eyes. When Max spotted him through the window, his reaction was immediate and visceral. Hackles raised, body trembling, a high-pitched whine escaping his throat as he retreated behind the counter. Financial reality hit hard that same week. Jason's landlord, Harrison Peters, stopped by unannounced. "I've had complaints about a dog on the premises." "Health code violation, Miller. Fix it or face eviction." "There's no law against a shop dog if he stays out of food preparation areas," Jason countered. But the threat hung heavy as Peters left. The community's reaction to Max proved mixed. Some customers were charmed by the restaurant dog story. Others voiced concerns about sanitation. An anonymous call brought a health inspector the following day, creating another headache Jason couldn't afford. That evening, Lily approached Jason with a crayon drawing. Max, standing beside a uniformed man, both at perfect attention. "Max showed me this in my dream," she explained matter-of-factly. "He says the bad man is looking for him." Max's protective instincts emerged most clearly at night. While Jason closed the restaurant, Max patrolled the perimeter, alerting to sounds beyond human hearing. Twice he woke Jason with urgent barking that revealed attempted break-ins at neighboring businesses. The breakthrough came when Jason changed Max's bedding. Hidden beneath the blanket was a tattered collar, the nameplate scratched but partially legible. Miller. Jason stared at the worn leather, a chill running down his spine as he traced the letters that matched his own surname. "Say cheese, Max," Jason encouraged, holding up his smartphone as the German Shepherd sat at perfect attention beside the restaurant entrance. The dog's coat had improved dramatically over the past 3 weeks. Still scarred, but now clean and gaining luster. Jason uploaded the photo with the caption, "Meet the bowing dog of Nashville, official greeter at Miller's Classic Burgers. Rescue dog story. Second chances." He hadn't expected the post to catch fire. By evening, local Nashville news sites had shared it. By the next morning, customers were arriving specifically to meet the dog who performed the unusual bowing gesture that had now become his signature greeting for regular patrons. "First time we've had a line since summer," Sarah remarked, hurrying between tables. Business had doubled almost overnight. Curious locals drawn by the story of the mysterious military-trained dog with the formal bow. Max remained cautious with strangers, but performed his ritual with dignity, accepting gentle pats from children with stoic patience. Sarah noticed it first, the way Max positioned himself between Lily and the door whenever customers entered. His body relaxed but ready. "He's guarding her," she told Jason one evening after closing. "When my ex called yesterday, Max stood between us before I even realized who was on the phone." Eleanor brought a dusty manual from home, its pages yellowed with age. "Harold's old training guide for military dogs," she explained. "Dog like that needs proper commands, structure. Might help with his rehabilitation." Following the manual's guidance, Jason began working with Max each morning before opening. The dog's response was immediate and revealing. He knew the commands already, responding to hand signals with precision that confirmed his professional background. German, Dutch, and English commands all registered in Max's understanding, though certain words triggered visible anxiety. Sometimes, at night, Max would whimper in his sleep, legs twitching as if running, soft cries escaping his throat. During these episodes, Jason glimpsed the trauma that still haunted the dog's dreams. Once, after a particularly bad night, Max refused to leave his corner until noon, eyes tracking invisible threats. The mysterious man, now identified as Michael Thompson through social media comments, began frequenting the restaurant. He would order coffee, sit at the corner table, and watch Max without approaching. The dog remained wary, maintaining distance, but no longer showing panic at Thompson's presence. Physical improvement came gradually. Max gained weight, his coat regained shine, and most wounds healed cleanly. Yet occasional setbacks raised concerns. Vomiting episodes with no apparent cause, lethargy that would strike suddenly and then pass. "Max talks to me at night," Lily told Jason matter-of-factly one afternoon while coloring at her usual table. "He says the bad man hurt his friends. He tried to help, but couldn't." Before Jason could question this strange statement, the restaurant's back door alarm triggered. Max bolted toward the kitchen, Jason following, to find the door ajar and signs of attempted entry. Nothing was stolen, but the lock had been professionally tampered with. Someone with skill had tried to gain access. The community's embrace of Max's story deepened as locals shared their own rescue dog tales. A Facebook group, Friends of the Boeing Dog, formed, with over 2,000 members. Local businesses donated supplies, and a pet bakery created Max Treats, with proceeds supporting animal rescue. Officer Robert Jensen, an active canine handler with Metro Nashville Police, stopped by after seeing Max's viral photo. "That's specialized patrol training," he observed, watching Max respond to Jason's commands. "Belgian Malinois get all the glory these days, but shepherds like him were the gold standard for decades. Mind if I try something?" Jensen performed a series of hand signals, subtle movements most wouldn't notice. Max responded instantly, demonstrating tactical positioning maneuvers used in high-risk police operations. "Whoever trained him knew what they were doing," Jensen said quietly. "This isn't just any service dog. This is top-tier law enforcement or military training." The concerning symptoms continued. Max collapsed during the lunch rush, frightening customers with the severity of his seizure. Dr. Reynolds ordered blood work, her expression grave when the results came in. "He's been systematically poisoned. Low doses of thallium, not accidental. Someone's trying to kill him, slowly." Security cameras installed after the break-in attempt captured a hooded figure leaving tainted meat in the back alley 3 nights in a row. The footage was too blurry for identification, but the deliberate targeting was undeniable. Through these challenges, the bond between Sarah and Jason strengthened. Late nights cleaning up after Max was sick, strategy sessions about security, shared concern for the dog's well-being. All created a connection neither had expected. Jason found himself watching her with Lily, appreciating the gentle strength that had carried them through whatever darkness lay in their past. "You know what my Harold used to say?" Eleanor offered one quiet afternoon, watching Jason change Max's water. "Wounded souls recognize each other. That dog chose you because you both know what it means to lose something precious." The comment struck deeper than Eleanor could know. That evening, Jason's ex-wife Melissa stopped by unexpectedly with paperwork regarding Tommy's summer arrangements. Her eyes widened at the transformed restaurant, now featuring a children's corner with dog-themed books and Max's memory wall covered with customer photos of rescue dogs. "This is different," she remarked, watching Max maintain respectful distance while tracking her movements. "Tommy mentioned a dog when he called his friend. I thought he was making it up." "He's welcome to meet Max next visit," Jason offered, tension easing slightly between them. The most significant breakthrough occurred during a violent thunderstorm that rattled windows and cut power briefly. Jason, sleeping on the restaurant office couch to monitor Max's condition, awoke to find the dog not in his bed, but sitting beside the couch, trembling, yet vigilant. For the first time, Max voluntarily placed his head under Jason's hand, accepting comfort rather than merely tolerating proximity. Eleanor, with her encyclopedic knowledge of military affairs, connected another dot the following day. "Samuel served with the 5th Special Forces Group, didn't he? They had that specialized canine program, dogs trained for both combat and rescue operations. Very hush-hush. My Harold mentioned it before he passed." Jason examined Max's collar again, cleaning the tarnished nameplate carefully. Under proper light and with gentle polishing, more letters emerged. Captain S. Miller. His father's rank and initial. The coincidence seemed impossible, yet the evidence sat in his hands. Before Jason could investigate further, the confrontation he'd been expecting finally occurred. Michael Thompson entered during the afternoon lull, approaching the counter with deliberate steps. "That dog doesn't belong to you," he stated flatly. No greeting, no preamble. "He doesn't belong to anyone who abused him either," Jason replied, tension immediately filling the room. Max emerged from the kitchen, positioning himself between the two men, neither growling nor retreating. A perfect tactical stance. "You don't understand what you're involved in," Thompson insisted, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "That dog is evidence in an ongoing investigation. He was never a stray. I rescued him from people who would have killed him." The standoff escalated as Thompson moved toward Max, triggering Jason's protective instinct. Sarah stepped between them, her normally quiet voice cutting through the tension. "Stop it! Both of you! Look what you're doing to him!" Max had flattened himself against the floor, trembling violently, yet still maintaining position to protect Jason, loyalty winning out over fear. The sight stopped both men cold. "I have proof," Thompson said finally, pulling out his phone to show photos. "I infiltrated a dogfighting ring run by Richard Blackwell. Max was being used as a bait dog because he refused to fight. I got him out before they could finish what they started." The partial truth hung in the air between them. Jason sensing there was more to the story, but recognizing the genuine pain in Thompson's eyes. "We should talk," Jason conceded. "But not here. And not around Max." As the confrontation de-escalated, the restaurant door chimed. A young couple entered with a rescue pit bull wearing a recently adopted bandana. "We saw your story online," the woman explained excitedly. "We wanted Max to meet Bella. Your post inspired us to adopt from the shelter." The moment marked a turning point. In the weeks that followed, Miller's Classic Burgers became an unofficial gathering place for rescue dog owners. Max, still cautious but improving, greeted each canine visitor with his distinctive bow, now performed from confidence rather than fear. Then came the collapse that changed everything. During a busy Saturday rush, Max staggered from behind the counter, legs buckling as he fell into a violent seizure. Blood tinged the foam at his mouth. His eyes, fixed on Jason, held a terrible awareness as his body betrayed him. "Call Dr. Reynolds!" Jason shouted, cradling Max's head as the German shepherd convulsed in his arms. "Tell her we're coming now!" "The poison has accumulated in his system over months," Dr. Reynolds explained, her face grave as she studied the test results. The clinic's overnight fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across her features. This wasn't accidental. It's thallium poisoning, combined with antifreeze, administered in carefully calculated doses to avoid immediate death, but ensure eventual organ failure. Jason gripped the edge of the metal examination table where Max lay sedated, monitoring equipment beeping steadily beside him. The German shepherd's breathing came shallow and labored, each rise and fall of his chest a small victory against the toxins ravaging his body. "Can you treat it?" Sarah asked, her arm around Lily, who had refused to stay home, insisting through tears that "Max needs me." "Yes, but it's complex and expensive," Dr. Reynolds replied, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "He'll need chelation therapy, specialized medications, multiple blood transfusions, and round-the-clock monitoring. We're looking at a minimum of $12,000, possibly more, depending on complications." The figure hit Jason like a physical blow. The restaurant's improved business had helped with regular expenses, but his savings remained depleted from slow months and Max's previous treatments. Even with credit cards maxed out, he couldn't come close to that amount. "I'll figure something out," he said, voice steady, despite the panic rising in his chest. "Whatever it takes." Sarah squeezed his arm gently. "We'll start a fundraiser. The community loves Max. They'll help." By morning, Sarah had created a GoFundMe page titled "Save the Boeing Dog of Nashville." She posted heartbreaking photos of Max in the clinic, explaining his rescue story and urgent medical needs. Within hours, local news stations picked up the story. By afternoon, they'd raised nearly $3,000. Impressive, but far short of their goal. As Jason kept vigil beside Max's kennel that evening, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I can cover all medical expenses. Give me the dog. Thompson." The offer tempted him more than he wanted to admit. Max needed treatment immediately. Pride couldn't stand in the way. Yet something felt wrong about surrendering Max to a man whose full story remained untold, a man whose very presence caused Max such distress. Before Jason could respond, Eleanor called. Her voice, normally so composed, trembled slightly. "I've spoken with my bank. I'm taking a second mortgage on my house, $10,000. It's not everything he needs, but it's something." "Ellie, I can't let you do that," Jason protested. "Your home is just a building," she interrupted firmly. "What matters is what we do for others while we're here." Samuel would have done the same for me. The restaurant transformed into campaign headquarters. Sarah coordinated volunteers, creating Save Max posters. Lily's school class made Get Well cards. Local businesses donated items for an emergency auction. The hashtag #BowingDogNashville trended regionally as Max's story spread. During a live interview with Channel 4 News outside the veterinary clinic, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up. Richard Blackwell emerged, Nashville's celebrated philanthropist and business leader, impeccably dressed and camera-ready. He handed the reporter a check with flourish. $5,000 for this brave animal's recovery, he announced. As chairman of the Nashville Humane Association Board, I couldn't stand by while this community hero suffers. The reporter beamed, but Jason felt ice in his veins. Max, heavily sedated but conscious during a brief treatment break, had a visceral reaction to Blackwell's voice on the clinic television. The monitors registered spiking heart rate and blood pressure as the German Shepherd tried to rise despite his weakness, a low growl emanating from his throat. Dr. Reynolds administered a mild sedative, concerned about Max's agitation. He recognized something or someone, she noted quietly to Jason after the reporter left. Dogs don't forget trauma triggers, even under heavy medication. Treatment began despite the funding shortfall, Dr. Reynolds calling in favors from specialist colleagues. The first 48 hours would be critical. Jason barely left the clinic, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair beside Max's kennel, leaving only when Sarah forced him to shower and change at the restaurant apartment. During one such brief absence, Jason returned to find Michael Thompson sitting beside Max's kennel, speaking softly to the sedated dog. Jason's anger flared instantly. "How did you get in here?" Thompson rose slowly, hands visible in a deliberate, non-threatening gesture. "Dr. Reynolds knows me. I worked with the Canine Medical Support Unit before." He trailed off, eyes haunted. We need to talk, somewhere private." The clinic's empty break room provided necessary privacy. Thompson paced the small space before finally speaking. "I wasn't just a canine officer. I was undercover, investigating Richard Blackwell's dogfighting operation for 3 years." His voice remained clinically detached, but his hands trembled slightly. "My partner, a Belgian Malinois named Ranger, was killed during a raid gone wrong. They made me watch." Jason remained silent, pieces beginning to connect. Max was one of their acquisitions, a fully trained military dog they planned to use for breeding aggressive fighters. When he refused to attack smaller dogs, they used him as bait instead. Thompson stopped, composing himself. "I extracted him during my last undercover visit, but my cover was already compromised. 2 days later, my apartment was firebombed. I wasn't there, but my neighbor's kid was hospitalized." "So you abandoned Max?" Jason's voice hardened. "I hid him with someone I trusted while I gathered evidence. When I returned, Max was gone. Escaped or stolen. I've been searching for months." "That doesn't explain why he's terrified of you." Thompson's face contorted briefly. "After Ranger died, I wasn't well. PTSD, they said. Had flashbacks, couldn't sleep. When Max wouldn't respond to commands one night during a particularly bad episode, I lost control." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't hurt him physically, but I scared him badly. Screamed, threw things. For a dog with his background, psychological trauma can be worse than physical abuse." Jason evaluated Thompson carefully, searching for deception. "Why should I believe you?" In response, Thompson pulled out his phone, accessing an encrypted app that displayed surveillance photos of Blackwell with known criminal associates. Documents detailing money laundering through his charitable foundation, and time-stamped photos of injured fighting dogs, including Max. "Blackwell isn't here to help. He's here to eliminate evidence. Max can identify him by scent. Dogs have testified in court before through identification lineups." As their uneasy alliance formed, Max's condition stabilized but remained critical. The fundraiser reached $8,500, still short, but enough to continue immediate treatment. Meanwhile, Jason discovered Thompson had been conducting surveillance on the restaurant for weeks, documenting suspicious vehicles and individuals. "Blackwell's men attempted to break in 3 times, Thompson explained, showing Jason surveillance photos. "They want any evidence you might have found with Max, and they want to ensure he never recovers enough to participate in an identification procedure." The most dramatic confirmation of Thompson's claims came 2 nights later. Security cameras captured 2 men breaking into the veterinary clinic through a service entrance. Jason and Thompson, who had been taking alternating watch shifts, confronted the intruders in the medication storage area. The ensuing struggle triggered the clinic's alarm. One intruder escaped, but Thompson subdued the second, a man later identified as a former employee of Blackwell Enterprises. Most shocking was Max's response to the commotion. Despite his weakened state, he had somehow freed himself from his kennel and dragged himself down the hallway, arriving at the critical moment to position his failing body between Jason and danger. When police arrived, Officer Jensen recognized the apprehended intruder. He's been questioned in 3 different dogfighting investigations. Charges never stuck. The incident brought police protection to the clinic and launched an official investigation into the break-in. Thompson provided carefully selected information to detectives, revealing his former undercover status without exposing his current unofficial investigation. Blackwell himself arrived the following morning, all concerned philanthropy as news cameras rolled. "I'm increasing my donation and providing private security for this brave animal," he announced, perfectly portraying the concerned citizen. Off camera, his eyes met Jason's with calculated assessment. That afternoon, as Max received a critical blood transfusion, Jason made the connection that had been nagging at his subconscious. Retreating to a quiet corner of the clinic waiting room, he pulled up old news articles about his father's fatal mission. Captain Samuel Miller had died during a flash flood rescue operation near the Tennessee-Kentucky border. The official report cited a bridge collapse, but details had always been sparse. What hadn't been mentioned in mainstream coverage, but appeared in military publications, was that Captain Miller had been conducting training exercises with his K-9 unit near property owned by a prominent Nashville businessman when the disaster struck. The businessman remained unnamed in reports, but a photo from a charity event in the article's sidebar showed a younger Richard Blackwell shaking hands with a military commander. The coincidence seemed too significant to ignore. Jason's phone buzzed with a text from Thompson. "Found something critical. Meet at your restaurant at midnight. Come alone." When Jason arrived, Thompson was already waiting in the darkened dining area, a thick file folder on the table before him. His face looked haggard, the circles under his eyes testifying to sleepless nights. "Your father wasn't just training dogs when he died," Thompson said, without preamble. "He was investigating the same operation I was. His official mission was flood rescue training, but he'd been tracking illegal importing of fighting dogs through military channels. Max was his partner." The revelation landed like a physical blow. Jason sank into a chair, staring at the collar he'd brought with him, the one with his father's name partially visible. "Blackwell discovered the investigation," Thompson continued. "The flood wasn't entirely natural. They blew up a small dam upstream when they learned Captain Miller was getting close. Made it look like an accident." "How do you know this?" Thompson slid the folder across the table. "Because your father left evidence. Documents, photographs, recordings, all pointing to Blackwell. The handler who had Max after your father died was transferring this evidence when he was killed. The evidence disappeared, but Max survived." "And you think Max knows where it is?" "I think Max is the key to finding it. Military dogs like him are trained to recognize specific locations, specific scents, if we can get him healthy enough." Their planning continued into the early morning hours. An unlikely alliance formed through shared purpose and Max's unwavering loyalty to both men, one his rescuer, the other connected to his original handler by blood. Meanwhile, at the clinic, Max's condition took an unexpected positive turn. Dr. Reynolds called at dawn, her voice reflecting cautious optimism. "His latest blood work shows improvement. The chelation therapy is working better than anticipated. He's responding to treatment." For the first time since Max's collapse, Jason allowed himself to hope. The German Shepherd had defied medical expectations before. Perhaps he would do so again, recovering not just for his own sake, but to help deliver justice for Captain Samuel Miller and all those who had suffered at Blackwell's hands. Jason stared at the foreclosure notice in disbelief, the official letterhead of Davidson County Courts stark against the manila envelope. 3 months behind on rent despite the recent uptick in business. The medical bills had drained everything. He crumpled the paper in his fist before smoothing it out again, reality refusing to disappear. The restaurant's mortgage had been purchased by Blackwell Properties, LLC. Effective immediately, he had 30 days to vacate or pay $22,000 in arrears. An impossible sum. Sarah found him at the small desk in the office, staring at the wall where his father's photo hung. "Jason?" Her voice pierced his thoughts. "The supply truck is here, but they're demanding payment before unloading." "Tell them to take it back," he said quietly. "All of it." She approached cautiously, noting the paper in his hand.
What's happened?
When he explained, her face paled. "What about the apartment? Lily and I—" She stopped, embarrassed by the sudden vulnerability. Jason had forgotten that Sarah's landlord had sold her building last month. She and Lily had been staying in a weekly rate motel while apartment hunting, their search complicated by Sarah's limited credit history after escaping her ex-husband's financial control. "I'll figure something out," he promised, the phrase becoming his mantra lately. "For all of us." At the veterinary clinic that evening, Dr. Reynolds delivered another blow. Max showed improvement initially, but the secondary blood work indicates kidney damage. We need to adjust his treatment protocol, more specialized medications, possibly dialysis. "Whatever he needs," Jason replied automatically. Dr. Reynolds' expression softened with concern. "Jason, the costs are already at $14,000. The fundraiser covered part, but you're personally liable for the rest. I need to know if you want to continue at this level of care." The question felt like a betrayal, though he knew she was being responsible. "He's fighting. We don't give up on fighters." Michael Thompson arrived as Jason was leaving the clinic, his gaunt face bearing news before he spoke. "I've been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer," he said without preamble. 6 months, maybe less. That's why I've been erratic. Pain medication, experimental treatments. It's no excuse for how I treated Max, but it's the truth. The confession explained Thompson's weight loss, the yellowing of his skin that Jason had attributed to poor lifestyle. "I'm sorry," Jason offered, meaning it despite their complicated history. "I don't have time for sorry," Thompson replied. "I need to finish what your father started. What I continued. Blackwell has to answer for everything. The dogs, your father, my partner. Justice doesn't care if I'm dying, and neither do I." When Jason returned to the restaurant, he found Sarah packing boxes with kitchen supplies, her movements mechanical. "My brother can store some things in his garage," she explained without meeting his eyes, "until we figure things out." The next morning, Eleanor didn't appear at her usual time. When Jason called, her neighbor answered, explaining that Eleanor had suffered a minor stroke and been hospitalized overnight. "She was very agitated about something," the neighbor explained. "Kept saying she needed to help the boy and his dog." Jason visited her at St. Thomas Hospital, alarmed by how small she looked in the hospital bed, her usually perfect hair disheveled against the stark white pillowcase. "Don't you worry about that second mortgage," she insisted, her speech slightly slurred. "My Harold left me well provided for." "The money doesn't matter," Jason said, squeezing her fragile hand. "You need to rest and get better." "Stubborn just like your daddy," she murmured, before drifting back to sleep. That night, Jason slept at the clinic, unwilling to leave Max alone, despite Thompson's offer to take shifts. The dog's condition had deteriorated again. His breathing labored as the toxins fought the treatments. In the fluorescent half-light, Jason watched Max's chest rise and fall, each breath a testament to the German Shepherd's will to survive. "I remember when Dad brought home his first military dog," Jason told the sedated animal, needing to fill the antiseptic silence. "I was maybe 10. Mom was furious. Said we barely saw him anyway. Why bring home another responsibility? But that dog changed our home. Dad said a good working dog is never just a tool. It's a partner that would die for you without hesitation." Max's ear twitched slightly at Jason's voice, the only indication he might be hearing. In sleep, the dog whimpered, legs twitching as if running, soft cries escaping his throat. Jason wondered what memories haunted Max's dreams. Training with his father? The horror of the fighting ring? The flood that took Captain Miller's life? Memory and obligation weighed heavier with each passing day. The restaurant closed temporarily the following Tuesday, a handwritten sign promising to reopen soon, a promise Jason wasn't sure he could keep. Social media support remained strong, but actual donations had plateaued as the holiday season approached and family budgets tightened. Sarah and Lily moved their few belongings into Jason's apartment above the restaurant, an arrangement meant to be temporary but feeling increasingly permanent as rental applications were rejected one after another. Lily set up her small collection of stuffed animals on the couch that served as her bed, arranging them to face the door so they can protect us like Max does. Thompson disappeared without explanation for 3 days, returning with dark circles under his eyes and a USB drive he refused to discuss. "Insurance," he called it, leaving it in Jason's safe without elaboration. The former officer's health visibly deteriorated, weight dropping, skin taking on a gray pallor, movements becoming measured to conserve energy. "You need medical attention," Jason insisted after finding Thompson vomiting in the restaurant bathroom. "Can't risk a hospital," Thompson responded. "Blackwell has people everywhere. One suspicious death is already too many on my conscience." Max required a second surgery when internal bleeding developed, a complication of the poisoning. The procedure depleted the last of the fundraiser money, leaving Jason facing impossible choices. Dr. Reynolds, understanding the situation, began discreetly absorbing some costs, listing them as professional courtesy discounts. "We're making progress," she encouraged, though her tired eyes revealed concerns she wouldn't voice. "His liver enzymes are improving, and the newest blood panel shows reduced toxin levels." Community support waned as weeks passed, the initial surge of goodwill fading as newer causes captured public attention. Regular customers still asked about Max, but the intense interest that had briefly made the German Shepherd a local celebrity had diminished. People moved on, their lives continuing, while Jason's remained suspended in uncertainty. The first snow of winter arrived early that year, a mid-November storm that blanketed Nashville in 6 unexpected inches, shutting down schools and businesses. At the veterinary clinic, the backup generator rumbled to life when power flickered throughout the neighborhood. Dr. Reynolds called with concern in her voice. "The clinic's main generator is struggling. If we lose power completely, we'll need to transfer critical patients to the emergency hospital across town. Can you come help transport Max? He's still too weak for kennel staff to handle safely." Jason arrived to find the clinic in controlled chaos, staff preparing animals for transport, working by emergency lighting as the regular power continued to fail intermittently. Dr. Reynolds met him at Max's kennel, medical chart in hand. "We'll sedate him lightly for transport." "The emergency clinic has been briefed on his condition." She hesitated. Jason, I need to be honest. This move is risky in his condition, but staying here without proper power for his monitoring equipment is riskier. The storm intensified as they loaded Max into Jason's truck, the German Shepherd sedated but partially alert, wrapped in thermal blankets with an IV bag hanging from a portable stand. The emergency clinic was normally a 20-minute drive, but Nashville drivers were notoriously ill-equipped for snow, abandoned cars already littering the main routes. Jason took back roads, creeping along at 10 miles per hour, wipers struggling against the heavy snowfall. In the passenger seat, Dr. Reynolds monitored Max's vitals, speaking reassuringly to him whenever his breathing changed. They were halfway to their destination when Jason felt the truck slide on black ice. He corrected instinctively, but the rear wheels caught a snowbank, sending them into a slow-motion skid off the unplowed road. They came to rest at an angle in a shallow ditch, the truck's front end buried in snow. "Max?" Jason called immediately, turning to see the German Shepherd still secure in his blanket nest, eyes open and alert despite the sedation. Dr. Reynolds was already on her phone.
No signal, she reported grimly. The storm's interfering.
Jason tried his own phone with the same result. Stepping outside to assess their situation, he found the truck undamaged but thoroughly stuck, the wheels spinning uselessly in deep snow when he attempted to reverse. The nearest houses were dark, likely evacuated or without power themselves. "We can't stay here," Dr. Reynolds said, checking Max's temperature. "His body temperature is already dropping. Without proper heating, he'll go into shock." The nearest emergency veterinary clinic was still 3 miles away. In normal conditions, a manageable walk. In a snowstorm with a critically ill 80-pound German Shepherd, nearly impossible. "I'll carry him," Jason decided, already calculating the route through his mind. "You can't carry a dog his size that distance in these conditions," Dr. Reynolds protested. "Watch me." They fashioned a sling from the thermal blankets, creating a makeshift harness that distributed Max's weight across Jason's shoulders and back. The dog remained calm throughout, his eyes tracking Jason's movements with complete trust that squeezed Jason's heart like a physical vice. They set out into the storm, Dr. Reynolds carrying the medical kit and IV bags, Jason bearing Max's weight with the grim determination of a soldier on a final mission. The snow fell in thick curtains, visibility reduced to mere feet, the wind cutting through their inadequate clothing like knives. 1 mile in, Jason's muscles screamed in protest. Max had lost weight during his illness, but still represented a significant burden over rough terrain. 2 miles in, Jason stumbled for the first time, regaining his footing but jarring Max, who whimpered softly. "We need to rest," Dr. Reynolds insisted, her own face red from cold and exertion. "Can't stop," Jason panted, each breath visible in the frigid air. "If I put him down, I won't be able to lift him again." By the 3rd mile, both humans were showing signs of hypothermia, confused thinking, slurred speech, uncontrollable shivering. Max's breathing had become shallow, his eyes closing for longer periods despite the jostling movement. The IV fluids had long since been depleted, the bags hanging empty from the makeshift harness. Jason didn't remember falling. One moment he was trudging forward, the next he was on his knees in the snow, Max's weight still across his shoulders, but now impossibly heavy, like the entire world pressing down. "Get up," he whispered to himself, his father's military discipline echoing in his mind. "Get up, soldier." His legs refused to cooperate. Beside him, Dr.
Reynolds had stopped walking, her professional demeanor finally cracking as the severity of their situation became undeniable. Jason managed to lay Max gently in the snow, cradling the dog's head in his lap. The German Shepherd's eyes opened briefly, recognition and something deeper reflected in their amber depths. "I'm sorry, Max," Jason whispered, tears freezing on his cheeks. "I tried. God knows I tried." In response, Max summoned strength from some deep reserve, lifting his head to press it against Jason's chest. Not a gesture of forgiveness, but of comfort. The dog who had suffered so much was trying, even now, to provide solace. The absurdity of their situation crashed over Jason. All the fighting, the fundraising, the medical interventions, only to freeze to death in a Nashville snowstorm 3 miles from help. He wrapped his arms around Max, using his own failing body heat in a final attempt to protect the animal who had become the center of his fragmented world. "I won't leave you," he promised, the words slurring as his core temperature dropped. "Not ever." Through the thickening mental fog, Jason thought he heard barking in the distance, faint at first, then growing louder. Max's ear twitched, his head raising slightly despite his weakness. A miracle of training and instinct, the German Shepherd summoned one last reserve of strength and let out 3 sharp barks, the universal canine signal for officer down. The answering barks came closer, accompanied by shouts and the yellow beams of flashlights cutting through the swirling snow. Max's head dropped back to Jason's lap, his duty fulfilled. As consciousness slipped away, Jason's last thought was that he had failed everyone. His father, Max, Sarah and Lily, Eleanor. All the people who had believed in him when he barely believed in himself. The darkness was almost a relief. Jason awoke to the rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors and the sensation of something warm pressed against his side. Opening his eyes required monumental effort, his lids seemingly weighted with lead. When he finally managed it, he found himself in a private hospital room, IV lines running into his arm, and Eleanor Williams sitting beside his bed, her silver hair illuminated by morning sunlight streaming through the window. "There you are," she said, her voice stronger than when he'd last heard it in her own hospital room. "You gave us quite the scare, young man." "Max," Jason croaked, his throat raw and painful. "Right where he belongs," Eleanor nodded toward Jason's other side. Turning his head required tremendous effort, but the sight that greeted him was worth it. Max lay carefully arranged on the hospital bed beside him, the German Shepherd hooked to a portable IV stand, a warming blanket draped over his thin frame. The dog's amber eyes were open, watching Jason with that impossible intelligence that had first drawn them together. "How?" Jason couldn't form complete sentences, his mind still foggy from what he now recognized as severe hypothermia. "Search and rescue found you," Eleanor explained, pouring water from a plastic pitcher. "I noticed you hadn't returned after Dr. Reynolds called about moving Max. When I couldn't reach either of you, I called Officer Jensen. He activated the Canine Search and Rescue Team. Against protocol in that weather," a new voice added. Officer Jensen himself stood in the doorway, a paper cup of coffee in his hand. But some rules need breaking. Their dogs picked up Max's scent even through the storm. "Found you just in time." Jason's memories returned in fragments. The cold, Max's weight across his shoulders, the crushing certainty of failure. "Dr. Reynolds? Mild hypothermia. Released yesterday," Jensen confirmed.
She's been calling hourly for updates. The door opened again, admitting Sarah and Lily. The little girl ran to the bedside, stopping short when she saw Max, her eyes wide with concern. "Is he better now?" "Getting there," Eleanor assured her. "Just like Jason." Sarah's hand found Jason's, squeezing gently. The dark circles under her eyes spoke of sleepless nights, but her smile reached them for the first time in weeks. "Don't ever scare us like that again," she whispered. The next visitor was unexpected. Michael Thompson entered cautiously, his gaunt frame leaning heavily on a walking cane, the advanced cancer evident in every labored movement. "You're tougher than you look, Miller," he observed, lowering himself carefully into a chair. Max's reaction to Thompson had changed dramatically. Where once he had shown fear, now he merely watched with calm assessment, recognizing a fellow warrior in his final battle. "They found evidence," Thompson said without preamble, his voice low enough that only Jason could hear. "After you were admitted, FBI agents executed a search warrant on Blackwell's properties. Based on information I've been gathering, they discovered documentation linking him to illegal dogfighting operations in 3 states. Jason struggled to process this information through his lingering mental fog. "My father?" "That's where it gets interesting." Thompson leaned closer. "They found Max's complete service record in Blackwell's private safe. Your father was conducting an official investigation into the use of military working dogs in illegal fighting rings. Captain Miller had evidence that Blackwell was using military contractors to obtain trained dogs." The full significance of this revelation struck Jason like a physical blow. "Max was my father's dog." Thompson nodded. "Max was with him during the flood. According to the records, the dog was recovered, but Captain Miller's body wasn't found initially. Max was reassigned to the K9 police unit, where I was working undercover. When I recognized Blackwell at a police charity event, I started connecting dots." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Wasn't certain until I accessed sealed military records." Thompson's expression darkened. "Blackwell's influence runs deep. He's had people removed for less than what we know." A nurse interrupted, checking Jason's vitals and examining Max with professional efficiency. "Your dog's latest blood work shows significant improvement," she informed Jason. "Dr. Stevenson says the emergency dialysis cleared most remaining toxins. The cold actually slowed the poison's metabolism, saved his organs from further damage." "He's not supposed to be on the bed," another nurse commented from the doorway. "Doctor's orders," the first nurse replied firmly. "Therapeutic animal intervention." After they left, Jensen rejoined the conversation. Thompson's evidence, combined with what the FBI found, was enough for federal charges. They arrested Blackwell this morning. "It won't stick," Thompson predicted grimly. "He's escaped prosecution before. Money talks." "Not this time," Jensen countered, sliding his phone across to show a news headline. "Prominent businessman arrested. Federal racketeering. Animal cruelty charges filed." The subsequent days brought a string of revelations, each more stunning than the last. Jason watched from his hospital bed as national news covered Blackwell's arrest and the discovery of documentation linking him to organized crime, illegal gambling, and animal fighting rings across the Southeast. Most shocking was the military report Thompson had finally accessed, the classified account of Captain Samuel Miller's final mission. What had been officially recorded as a training accident during flash flood conditions was revealed as a deliberate act. Captain Miller had gathered evidence of Blackwell's operation using military connections to acquire trained dogs. When Blackwell discovered the investigation, he arranged for a small dam to be compromised upstream from where Miller's team was conducting exercises. "Your father managed to evacuate his team," Thompson explained, showing Jason the declassified report. "He sent Max ahead with the evidence pouch. These dogs are trained to carry crucial materials to safety. But the bridge collapsed before your father could cross. His body wasn't recovered for 3 days." "And Max?" Jason asked, his hand automatically moving to stroke the German Shepherd's head. "Completed his mission. Delivered the waterproof evidence pouch to the rally point exactly as trained. But the evidence disappeared while in military police custody. Blackwell's influence again. Without it, the investigation stalled, then closed. Max was reassigned to regular K-9 duties. The final piece clicked into place. "That's how you got involved." Thompson nodded. "I recognized your father's case number on files Blackwell was trying to locate. Started my own investigation. Went undercover in the dogfighting circuit. When Max was transferred to our K-9 unit, I realized who he was, your father's partner. I thought he might be the key to finding backup evidence. But your cover was blown. And I couldn't risk staying in official channels with Blackwell's reach. I took Max and went dark. Then my diagnosis came." Thompson's voice faded momentarily. "I wasn't thinking clearly. Pain, medication, fear. I scared him during an episode. He ran. I've been searching ever since." The military officially acknowledged Captain Samuel Miller's death as occurring in the line of duty, not as a training accident. A formal ceremony was scheduled to posthumously award him the Soldier's Medal for saving his team at the cost of his own life. As Jason recovered, Max never left his side. Hospital regulations were bent through a combination of Sarah's gentle persuasion, Eleanor's formidable insistence that her emotional support animal required her grandson's company, and the unexpected intervention of the hospital director, a retired Army colonel moved by the story of a military working dog's loyalty. Medical updates continued to improve. Max's kidney function stabilized, his blood work showing remarkable recovery. Dr. Reynolds visited daily, marveling at the German Shepherd's resilience. Medically speaking, he should be much worse off. Whatever kept him fighting, whatever gave him purpose, it's stronger than any treatment protocol. News crews gathered outside the hospital. The story of Max's service and rescue capturing national attention. Veterans organizations issued statements honoring both Captain Miller and Max. A military working dog association announced a scholarship in Captain Miller's name. On Jason's 4th day in the hospital, his ex-wife Melissa arrived with Tommy. Their 8-year-old son rushed to the bedside, stopping short at the sight of Max. "Is this him? The hero dog from the news?" Tommy asked, eyes wide with wonder. "This is Max," Jason confirmed. "Max, this is Tommy." The German Shepherd studied the boy carefully before extending his paw in formal greeting, the military precision of his training evident in the gesture. Tommy's face lit with delight as he solemnly shook the offered paw. "Dad, everyone at school is talking about your dog." Tyler said his mom cried watching the story on TV. Melissa approached more cautiously, her expression a complex mixture of emotions. "Your son has talked about nothing else since your story hit the national news."
She hesitated, then added, "You look good, Jason." Different. Before Jason could respond, a hospital administrator arrived with unexpected news. "Mr. Miller, we've received some unusual correspondence for you." She handed him an envelope bearing official federal government seals. "And a book publisher called. They're interested in Max's story." Inside the envelope was a letter from Senator Williams of Tennessee, offering assistance in establishing a second chance program for rescue dogs, using Miller's classic burgers as a model. Accompanying the letter was contact information for a veterans business grant program Jason hadn't known existed.
"Things are happening rather quickly," Eleanor observed dryly. "Amazing what a little national attention can accomplish." The most surprising visitor arrived that evening. A tall woman in a crisp business suit introduced herself as Catherine Montgomery, representing Riverside Development Group. "We've purchased the building housing your restaurant," she informed Jason. "Previous ownership transferred to our company when Mr. Blackwell's assets were frozen." Jason's heart sank. Another eviction notice, this time from corporate hands. "Our CEO is a military veteran," Montgomery continued. "He's authorized me to offer you a new lease with favorable terms. Additionally, we'd like to discuss expanding into the vacant space next door, perhaps a dedicated, pause-friendly seating area. The marketing potential is considerable." As Montgomery left her card, promising to send formal paperwork once Jason was discharged, Thompson watched with undisguised skepticism. "Convenient timing," he remarked after she departed. "Corporations love good publicity." "Sometimes people surprise you," Eleanor countered. "Not everyone has an angle." "Everyone has an angle," Thompson insisted. "Just have to figure out if you can live with it." The final revelation came through Dr. Reynolds, who arrived breathless with excitement on the morning of Jason's scheduled discharge. "I've been consulting with veterinary toxicologists about Max's poisoning," she explained. "The specific combination of toxins is unique, a signature. The FBI lab matched it to 3 unsolved poisonings of police dogs in cases involving Blackwell." "Evidence," Thompson said simply. "Enough for additional federal charges," Jensen confirmed, joining them. "And something else. They found a waterproof evidence pouch in Blackwell's collection of trophies. Contents intact after all these years. Your father's final report, Captain Miller's recordings, everything needed to connect Blackwell to the dam sabotage." For Jason, this news represented more than legal justice. It was vindication of his father's sacrifice, confirmation that Captain Miller had completed his mission through Max, his loyal partner, who had somehow found his way back to his handler's son years later. As discharge papers were processed, Jason found himself surrounded by the unlikely family that had formed around Max. Sarah arranging his follow-up appointments with quiet efficiency. Lily reading to Max from a children's book about brave dogs. Eleanor supervising it all with grandmotherly authority. Thompson watching from the corner with wary protectiveness, and Max, ever vigilant, ever present, positioned where he could observe everyone at once. In that moment, Jason recognized the depth of change in his life since the day he'd first watched a bowing German shepherd from his restaurant window. The dog who had lost everything had somehow given Jason everything that mattered: purpose, family, truth, and a second chance to honor his father's legacy. "Ready to go home, Max?" Jason asked softly. The German shepherd's ears perked forward at the word home, his amber eyes fixed on Jason with absolute certainty. In that silent exchange lay a promise between two survivors. The journey ahead might be difficult, but neither would face it alone again. 6 months after the snowstorm that nearly claimed their lives, Jason stood in the doorway of the newly expanded Max & Miller's, marveling at the transformation. The once struggling burger joint had evolved into a community gathering place, with the original restaurant now complemented by a spacious Paws Welcome patio in the previously vacant neighboring space. The grand reopening had attracted a line stretching around the block, locals and tourists alike drawn by the story that had captured hearts nationwide. Nashville's mayor would arrive soon to cut the ceremonial ribbon, accompanied by military representatives honoring the legacy of Captain Samuel Miller. "Nervous?" Sarah asked, appearing beside him in her new chef's coat. The past months had revealed her hidden culinary talents. Her special recipes now featured prominently on the expanded menu. "Terrified," Jason admitted, adjusting his tie. The formal attire felt strange after years in casual restaurant clothes, but today demanded something special. Sarah straightened his collar with practiced ease, their casual intimacy a testament to how much had changed. The man who carried an 80-pound German Shepherd through a blizzard is afraid of a ribbon cutting? That was survival instinct. This is... He gestured toward the gathered crowd, cameras, and journalists setting up equipment. "Also survival," she finished, her smile reaching her eyes in the way that still made his heart skip. Just a different kind. Their business partnership had evolved naturally into something deeper, though both moved cautiously, mindful of past wounds. Sarah and Lily had permanently moved into the renovated apartment above the restaurant, their presence transforming the once empty space into a home filled with Lily's artwork, Sarah's books, and the unmistakable sense of family. Eleanor held court at her special corner table, now marked with a small brass plaque reading, "Reserved for Grandma Ellie." At 79, she had recovered fully from her minor stroke and appointed herself unofficial greeter, historian, and honorary grandmother to any child who entered. Her signature cookies, now baked by Lily under her careful tutelage, had become a restaurant staple. "Those reporters are asking about Max again," Eleanor called, gesturing toward the journalists setting up cameras. "I told them he'd make his entrance when good and ready." As if summoned by his name, Max appeared from the kitchen, his coat gleaming with health, the battle scars now badges of honor rather than painful reminders. The German Shepherd moved with military precision, stopping to accept gentle greetings from regular customers who recognized the protocol. No sudden movements, no reaching over his head. Respectful appreciation rather than excessive affection. Gone was the desperate animal who once bowed for scraps. In his place stood a dignified working dog who carried himself with the quiet confidence of one who knew his place in the world. The only time Max now lowered his head was during the moments of silence held each month to honor fallen service dogs and their handlers, a tradition Jason had established at the restaurant's community events. "There's our star," Sarah whispered, as Max completed his inspection round and returned to Jason's side, sitting at perfect attention. "Hero dog, just doing his job," Jason corrected, using the phrase that had become their inside joke after one particularly overwrought television interview. He knelt to Max's level, straightening the formal service vest the German Shepherd wore for special occasions. "Ready for the circus, buddy?" Max's intelligent eyes held Jason's gaze, a connection that required no words. Their journey from strangers to family had forged a bond that visitors often commented on, the silent communication between man and dog that transcended ordinary understanding. Michael Thompson watched from a nearby table, his gaunt frame a stark reminder of his ongoing battle with cancer. Against all medical predictions, he had survived 6 months beyond his prognosis, attributing his extended time to unfinished business rather than the experimental treatment program he'd finally agreed to try. Thompson's testimony had proven crucial in the federal case against Blackwell, who now awaited trial on multiple charges, including racketeering, animal cruelty, and, most significantly, conspiracy in the death of Captain Samuel Miller. The former officer had found purpose in his final months, working with prosecutors to ensure Blackwell would never again harm animals or people. "Quite the transformation," Thompson remarked as Jason approached his table. "Your father would be proud." "Of Max," Jason agreed. "Of both of you," Thompson corrected. "The dog completes the mission, but the handler makes it possible." He nodded toward the restaurant's memorial wall, where Captain Miller's photograph now anchored a growing collection of adopted rescue dog photos. Second chances, all around. The monthly adoption events hosted at Max and Miller's had found homes for 64 dogs in 6 months. Each success story added to the wall with owner permission, creating a visual testament to the ripple effect of one act of kindness. The most recent edition showed an elderly gentleman with a senior German Shepherd, both looking equally pleased with their newfound companionship. The restaurant door chimed as Tommy entered with Melissa, their scheduled arrival perfectly timed before the ceremony. At 9 years old, Tommy had grown an inch since Christmas, his increasing resemblance to Jason more pronounced. The revised custody arrangement, another unexpected blessing from the media attention, now included weekly dinners at the restaurant and alternating weekends. "Max!" Tommy called, forgetting the protocol in his excitement. The German Shepherd didn't mind, extending his paw in their special greeting before allowing the boy to hug him properly. Their bond had developed naturally, the dog somehow understanding Tommy's importance to Jason. Melissa hung back, still finding her place in this reconfigured family dynamic. The woman who had once declared Jason's restaurant dream irresponsible now watched with uncomfortable admiration as her ex-husband managed a successful business, media attention, and their son's obvious adoration. "Place looks great," she offered. "Tommy's teacher asked if you'd consider visiting his class for career day. Apparently, restaurant owner/dog rescuer ranks higher than firefighter this year." Before Jason could respond, Sarah called from the doorway, "They're ready for us outside." The gathered crowd cheered as Jason emerged with Max at his side, the German Shepherd's disciplined demeanor breaking only when he spotted Lily, waving from beside the podium. The little girl had become Max's special person, the one he sought when thunderstorms frightened him, the one who could touch his scars without triggering flinches, the one he checked on each night before settling at the foot of Jason and Sarah's bed. The mayor's speech praised community spirit and second chances, themes that had become central to the restaurant's identity. The military representative spoke of Captain Miller's service and sacrifice, posthumously presenting the Soldier's Medal that would hang beside his photograph inside. A representative from the Working Dog Foundation announced a training scholarship established in Max's name for rescued dogs showing service potential. When Jason's turn came to speak, he kept his remarks brief, uncomfortable with the attention, but determined to redirect it appropriately. "Max did what military dogs are trained to do, complete the mission, regardless of circumstances. The real heroes are the animals who serve without recognition, and the handlers who work alongside them. Our restaurant is just one small way to honor that partnership. As the ceremonial ribbon was cut, photographers called for Max to participate. The German Shepherd looked to Jason for permission, before accepting the ribbon end carefully between his teeth, his dignified pose capturing perfectly the journey from desperate street dog to honored service animal. Inside, the celebration continued as customers filled every table, the new patio accommodating guests with their own dogs. Sarah oversaw the kitchen with calm efficiency, her confidence growing with each successful service. Lily proudly distributed her cookies, stopping frequently to check on Max, who had settled in his designated greeting area near the entrance. "This place has become something special," Eleanor observed, joining Jason at the counter. "Not just a restaurant anymore." "No," he agreed, watching Sarah laugh with a customer while Lily demonstrated Max's formal bow trick to delighted children. "It's home." The afternoon brought a steady stream of well-wishers, including Officer Jensen and several canine handlers, who exchanged respectful nods with Max, recognizing a fellow professional. Dr. Reynolds arrived with her therapy dog in training, a formerly abused spaniel making remarkable progress under her care. Thompson, conserving his limited energy for the important moments, made his way to Jason as the crowd thinned. "I'm heading to the treatment center tomorrow," he said without preamble. "Might be gone a while this time." They both understood what remained unsaid. Each treatment cycle offered diminishing returns, each goodbye potentially the last. Thompson had already arranged for his service revolver to be properly cleaned and mounted in a display case, his final gift to the restaurant's memorial wall. "We'll keep your table," Jason promised, the words simple but laden with meaning. Whatever their complicated beginning, Thompson had become family too, another damaged soul finding connection through Max's unlikely journey. As evening approached, the restaurant settled into normal service rhythm. Jason moved between tables, greeting customers with newfound ease, no longer the struggling owner, but a confident community figure. The transition still surprised him sometimes, how tragedy and near failure had ultimately led to something so meaningful. The day's final notable arrival came just before closing, a man in worn clothes clutching a leash attached to a nervous pit bull mix. "I saw your story on the news," he explained hesitantly. "They said you help dogs nobody wants. This one's scheduled for euthanasia tomorrow if nobody takes her." Jason exchanged glances with Max, who had approached to assess the newcomer. The German Shepherd's body language showed no aggression, only calm interest as he carefully sniffed the trembling pit bull. After a moment, Max did something remarkable. He performed his formal bow to the frightened dog, as if welcoming her to safety. "Bring her in," Jason said simply. "We know someone who can help." Later, with the restaurant closed and the rescue dog safely delivered to Dr. Reynolds' overnight care, Jason sat on the patio with Sarah, watching the Nashville sunset paint the sky in brilliant orange and purple. Max lay at their feet, his head resting lightly against Jason's boot, the contact a constant reassurance to them both. "I never thought I'd have this again," Sarah said quietly, her head against Jason's shoulder. "A home. Safety, family." "Neither did I," Jason admitted, thinking of the lonely man he'd been 6 months earlier, isolated in grief and failure, unable to see beyond survival. Max changed everything. "You both saved each other," she observed. "That's how family works."
On the patio wall behind them hung the restaurant's new sign, the words illuminated by soft lighting. Second chances serve daily. Below it, a framed photograph showed Max in his military service vest, head held high with dignity. The same dog who had once bowed desperately for scraps, now standing proud. His journey from despair to belonging captured in a single powerful image. Jason looked at the German shepherd resting peacefully beside him, then at the woman whose strength had helped rebuild not just a restaurant, but a life worth living, and finally toward the apartment where Lily slept, surrounded by her drawings of their unconventional family. A little girl who understood intuitively what many adults never grasped, that love creates bonds stronger than blood, and courage often arrives in unexpected forms. Family, Jason agreed, the word no longer painful but healing. Not what I expected, but exactly what I needed. Max lifted his head at Jason's voice, amber eyes meeting his with that impossible understanding that had been there from the beginning. The recognition between two souls who had lost everything and found something greater in each other. In response, Jason lowered his head slightly in acknowledgement. A human version of the bow that had once been a desperate plea, but now represented their shared journey from darkness into light. The dog who once bowed his head in hopeless supplication now held it high with well-earned dignity. A living testament to the resilience of the broken and the transformative power of being truly seen. No longer begging for help, Max had become the help others sought, the embodiment of second chances that continued to ripple outward from one simple moment of connection on a Nashville street corner. In a world that often rushes past the vulnerable, the story of Max and Jason reminds us that our deepest connections can begin with a simple act of kindness. Like Max, many of us know what it means to stand alone, to bow our heads in silent plea, wondering if anyone will notice. And like Jason, we've all faced moments where our carefully built lives crumble, leaving us questioning our purpose. But this extraordinary bond between a broken man and a wounded dog shows us that it's never too late for second chances. The family they built, not through blood, but through choice, reflects life's most beautiful truth. Our greatest healing often comes through helping others heal. When Max finally held his head high, no longer bowing in desperation, but standing with dignity, he embodied the transformation possible in each of us. What unexpected friendship has changed your life when you needed it most? Or, perhaps more importantly, is there someone bowing before you today, silently asking for the recognition only you can give? Share your story below, because in telling our stories of connection, we create more opportunities for others to find theirs.